Let's go to the seat of Wentworth now. Dave Sharma is the MP for Wentworth. He joins me live now. Pre-polls, well, they started about an hour and a half ago. Are you nervous, Dave Sharma?
Oh, I'm always nervous, Laura. Don't take anything for granted, and this will be a close and competitive election here in Wentworth and indeed around the country. But it's, as you said, early voting started. I've just been standing at one of our pre-poll stations near Waverley Oval. Voters are starting to trickle in, but I think there's a lot of people who are, still to make up their minds here.
And what are they saying to you on these pre-polls, Dave? What was your experience this morning? Are people angry at your government? Are they very polite to you? Are they saying they like you but can't vote for Morrison? What is it?
Well, to be honest, Laura, the sample size was pretty small today. I think there were about 8 voters.
We're just looking from anecdotal evidence, that's all.
It's nothing empirical. No, look, I'm not getting that sense. I had a lot of people who indicated that they would be voting for me, that they were glad to see me standing out there, that they're pleased with the job I'd done, that they thought that the government should have done some things differently during the pandemic, but they were still going to be supporting us because the alternative wasn't one they were willing to contemplate. I think people, as you'd expect, when they come to vote, they're weighing up a whole lot of things and they're looking at the big issues, not the micro issues or the gotchas or the small things that might have happened in the last week. They're looking at the totality of this government's record over 3 years, and I think we've got a good one in terms of getting Australia through the pandemic, bringing the economy through whole and positioning Australia for a more dangerous external environment. Again,
not empirical evidence, but if you look at some of the pre-polls this morning, it looks like Allegra spenders, volunteers are outnumbering yours and it's a pretty big gap. Should we take anything from that?
Oh, look, that wasn't the case where I was this morning, Laura. I haven't been to all the pre-poll stations, but, look, I think I think voters make their minds up on consequential issues, not the number of activists you've got present at any one place at any one time. I mean, ultimately, it's the voters that decide this, not the party volunteers, and that's how it should be.
Activists, is that what they are?
Look, I think anyone who's signed up for a party is an activist and is in some way engaged in the political process. But I think most Australians, they keep their political views private by and large and to themselves, and they exercise their vote and their view and show their viewpoint when they're in the privacy of the ballot box. I don't think having a lot of people out there one way or the other, or having a lot of material or any of these sorts of things really makes all that much difference. It might help with name identification, but I think in terms of how do people make up their minds, I'd be surprised if it was as superficial as that.
OK, let's talk some policy then. The Religious Freedom Bill has once again been raised by Scott Morrison on the campaign. This is something that he promised last election, didn't do, was unable to do. In fact, you crossed the floor on this. So what is your red line here? If he's going to reintroduce this bill, what does it look like?
Well, look, my position on this hasn't changed, Laura. I believe that religious people and people of faith should deserve protection against discrimination on the grounds of their faith. But I also believe, and this was something that I've talked about now at 2 previous elections here in Wentworth, I also believe that students and teachers should not be discriminated against in religious schools on account of their gender orientation or their sexual orientation or their gender identity. And I think both those propositions can be true at the same time, and any legislation needs to reflect both of those viewpoints.
Can that be done, in your view, because it was insurmountable in this term?
I think it can be done. I mean, I think we probably need a bit more time to have the discussion. We didn't have the time in the last term of Parliament because of a number of other more pressing matters, including the response to the pandemic and COVID relief measures and everything else. But I think we can make sure that people of faith are protected against on the grounds of their faith, but also that old and outdated provisions in the Sex Discrimination Act that are no longer consistent with contemporary Australian values can be repealed or dealt with at the same time. And I don't think that's a difficult task. I think we need a bit of work and a bit of consultation in order to do it, and I think the next Parliament will provide us that opportunity.
What about the debate last night? The Prime Minister was asked one simple question about whether people should be paid the minimum wage, and he seemed to kind of couch it in different terms and said it depends. What do you think?
Well, I'm sorry, didn't watch the debate last night. I had my own candidates debate here in Wentworth, which I was attending, so I didn't see the leaders' debate. So I didn't see what he said. I don't think I can actually comment on the exchange because I haven't read the reports of it either.
Well, OK, let me ask you the question. Do you think that people should be paid a minimum wage?
Yeah, I think people should be paid the wage that's set by the Fair Work Commission and set in legislation and, for the particular job that they're doing. Yes, I do.
OK. One final question before we let you go, Dave Sharma, because I'm sure you'll be in a few pre-poll booths today and for the next 12 days. What about these documents that we've seen in The Australian this morning that show plans basically in the Solomon Islands for ports and submarine lines? Would that be the start of some kind of military build-up?
Look, I think it's very worrying, and this is why we've been so concerned about that the agreement that's been struck between Solomon Islands and China, because it does provide the basis for these sorts of things. This is as much about establishing infrastructure for a future presence and support for a future presence, but these are all enablers. An upgrade of the electricity supply, an upgrade of the telecommunication system. Bigger porting facilities, all these sorts of things are the things you'd need to support a bigger naval or military presence from another country. And I think that's why it's so worrying. We should be concerned about this agreement. We should be doing all we can to convince Solomon Islands that it's not in their interest, and we should be doing all we can to work with our neighbours in the Pacific and the neighbours of Solomon Islands to convince them that that's the case, because this would introduce a very destabilising presence into the region. The Southwest Pacific has been not the subject of competition by foreign powers since the end of the Second World War, and we would hate to see that return. It would be damaging to the people of the region. It would certainly be damaging to Australia's national interests. OK, do you think you can win? Yes, I believe I can, but I don't take it for granted. I think I've shown the people of Wentworth over the last 3 years the sort of representative I am, that I'll be true to my values, that I'll reflect their voice in the parliament, but that I'll also be part of a government team that can actually get things done for the nation, that has a seat at the decision-making table. And I think that's what you get from me as opposed to an independent candidate. You'll get someone who can reflect the views and values of Wentworth, as I've shown I will do on multiple times, including standing up to my own colleagues in the party, but that is also part of a bigger government team that can address the big issues facing Australia, whether it's economic uncertainty or a deteriorating national security environment. All right, 12 days ago. We'll speak to you soon, Dave Sharma. Thanks so much, Laura.